for the hardcore Bitcoiners out there who feel that the whole mission behind Bitcoin is to be self-sovereign and to self-custody it, who don't trust and don't want, third parties to be involved at all, what do you say to them and their distrust for companies like BlackRock and some of these big Wall Street firms who maybe they feel have contributed to some of the wealth concentration and erosion of the American worker?
I would say that Bitcoin fixes everything. And so if we think about what that means, Bitcoin fixes everything, and we need to be prepared for Bitcoin to infuse everything. You're an individual, and so you believe being a sovereign individual, so you buy Bitcoin and you hold your own keys. Okay, good. Now you get married, and now there's two of you, and one of you doesn't want to do the work, so the other one takes responsibility. And so now one of the two of you in the marriage holds the keys. Okay, that's a family. A family should be able to do it. And then you have, okay, so then you have 4 kids and 16 grandkids, and the children are 3 years old, and you're going to hold some Bitcoin for the 3-year-old. And then eventually you have grandparents and they're 85 years old and they don't use computers that well. So now the family becomes an extended family with 28 people, and perhaps 2 people or 3 people hold the key. So now you've got a little Fedi man, or you've got a multi-sig, the family treasury. What do I say to the people, the 85-year-old in the family that says, I want to hold my own keys? Well, my answer is they're not saying it, right? Like the 3-year-old and the 1-year-old and the 85-year-old is not complaining that, their 2 sons or the mother and the father hold their keys, right? Any more than I didn't complain that my mother and father had the car keys when I was 12 years old and I didn't get the car keys. The answer is families are going to have there's a custodial relationship, right? You're the mother and you have 6 kids and you have the car keys and they don't have the car keys and you drive them to school in station wagon. That's custodial. Mm-hmm. Like what I have to say is that's fine, right? It's okay to be an individual. It's okay to be a couple. It's okay to be a family. Now, after that, you're a school. Okay, so when your school actually has 400 people in it and an endowment and it's a private school, and they have a multi-sig relationship and there's 3 people or 5 people on the board of directors that hold the keys, is it okay that the 500 parents don't? Is it okay that the 500 kids don't? Okay, what about the country club? What about the church? Is it okay, that 10 people hold the keys for 1,000 people in the church? Now you get to the city. Well, what about the city wants to have a Bitcoin endowment? Do we give the keys to the mayor of the city? I wouldn't. I mean, I think that maybe the city council might have a multi-signature thing, but there's going to be a custodial relationship there, right? And then should you be able to start a company? Can the world exist without companies? No, we need companies. We need companies to create food and operate restaurants. So if the guy that runs the restaurant wants to have a treasury, is it okay for the CEO of the restaurant, right, to have some Bitcoin? And then now the question is, well, what happens when you have a pension fund or a union or a university endowment? Well, as those things happen, you're going to have other types of custodians. And then what happens if a country wants to back its treasury or put Bitcoin into its treasury? Well, countries are not going to let the Secretary of the Treasury hold the keys on behalf of 50 million people. So I think the right way to think of it is Bitcoin is going to be a base layer, and there's going to be layer 2s like Lightning to move things fast, but there's going to be layer 3s that are custodial, like Cash App, like Coinbase, like Fidelity, like JP Morgan, like Bank of America, like Apple, like Google. They're going to be custodial layer 3s, and they're going to exist either to provide functionality, like do we want 1 billion people on Apple iPhones to be able to move Bitcoin instantly from the iPhone using the Apple iOS? And the answer is probably yeah. So there are going to be technical reasons to trust a third party. There are going to be political reasons, like the mayor of New York is the mayor of New York, and we put someone in charge of New York. So when New York wants to hold Bitcoin, you're going to have New York as a custodian, New York City. So there's a political reason. Unless you get rid of New York City, and I don't think California or New York City or the United States or Iceland as a country, I don't think they're going away this decade. So I think there are going to be political distinctions that cause the need for custodians. Then I think there are also going to be other sorts of natural reasons, like I have Alzheimer's and I'm 85 years old, and who can I trust? Or I want to leave it to my unborn grandchild in a trust. Okay, how do I do that? And so I think the best way to think about Bitcoin is Bitcoin offers sovereignty and integrity and empowerment, not just to the individual, but also to the family, the clan, the village, the city, the county, the state, the province, the country, the company, the institution, the agency, right? The group, the community organization. Every one of those entities, they all have their own agency, and we don't want them to not have access to this, right? Bitcoin makes your country better, makes your company better, makes your family better, makes your community better, makes your school better, makes you better, right? It's gonna make everything better, but there are different types of wrappers we need to put it in. Some people will always be, self-custody. Some will be multi-sig. Some will be multi-sig layer 2. Some of them will need a layer 3 custodian. They'll either need it for political purposes, or they'll need it for utility purposes or functionality purposes, or they'll need it because they're wrapping it into another good or a product or service that they're offering that runs on that layer 3. So we shouldn't be afraid of those things. Someone said, well, are you afraid that these big organizations are going to buy Bitcoin and centralize it? And I said, well, it's like asking me if I'm afraid that someone in Japan is going to speak English and if that's going to undermine the English language, right? If Samsung is the biggest company in Korea and they start speaking English and they build support for English into their products, does that corrupt the English language? No, it actually makes English better. They're going to use it differently. What's the likelihood that Samsung can change the definition of love or change the meaning of 100 different words, by adopting it? It's like not likely, but so I think that it's a protocol. The protocol is going to infuse everything, and we shouldn't be afraid of all the different ways that people choose to integrate, wrap, embed, or execute with Bitcoin. There's no one right answer, and the marketplace will determine the right mix of integrations of Bitcoin.